All right, I want to welcome Rima Sawhney to the show. Rima, thank you for joining us. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Rima is literally a fresh faced new attorney as of January 2021. Um, Originally, Rima, at what age were you when you first decided that you may want to pursue a legal career?
I think it was when I was at UC San Diego. I was taking a course on law and society. And I remember we had a final exam, and the professor was asking us questions on freedom of speech and, protected speech versus unprotected speech. So we got into hate speech, obscenity. And the final exam question said there was a scenario, and it said, is the speech protected? And I remember writing yes, and then erasing it, writing no, and then erasing it, writing maybe. And then I wrote an explanation for both sides of the argument, and I realized that was the correct answer, that the law is not always black and white. There is a gray area. And as legal advocates, we argue that gray area a lot of the time. And then I realized, like, this is something I want to do. And in theory, it was very attractive to me. Just learning the black letter law, learning how we have an effect on society. But then after that, I needed to know, like, is this something I want to invest in? Because law school is such a big commitment financially, mentally, physically, even. And then I started applying to jobs after UC San Diego, after I graduated. And then I worked with Oliver Viejo my first year, and that just set in stone, like, this is something I wanted to do.
Nice. What type of law did Oliver do?
He also did personal injury. It was 1 year right before I started working with you. And then right when I started working with you, I was there for like a little bit less than a year. And I knew, like, this is definitely something I wanted to do. I actually really enjoyed working with you. And my experience was probably the best experience I've had, even throughout law school. I think you were one of the few attorneys who actually treated me as an associate rather than a legal assistant, because I had the position of legal intern, judicial extern, legal secretary, and I was always confined to that job title. I was never treated as a colleague. Um, but then because of the experience I had with you, I was able to branch out and say, like, hey, I have done this before. I do have more experience. I've sat in on mediations, depositions. I summarized medical records. And so the experience that I took with Oliver and with you, I was able to say, like, look, I'm more qualified than you actually think I am. And I was able to grow even more throughout law school.
Yeah, I always talk about the. I'm not going to mention the case name, but there was a trial we had, and you sat in on the trial, and it was me, you, and the client, and we were waiting for the jury to come back in deliberations, and so the client had like the highest. He thought we were going to get the highest amount, and then you were in the moderate, and I was like the lowest because I was there facing the jury, and I could tell that the jury wasn't really like feeling what I was saying. And I always tell that to my clients because sometimes everything is a matter of perspective, and three different people could view the facts three different ways. And obviously, the jury viewed it a fourth different way or whatever, right? And
Right.
so I always think about that. But like you were, because my office was extremely small at the time, like you were very active in the process, and I would use you as like give me feedback. So like, what do you think about this argument? What do you think about that argument? We need to do this, we need to do that. So I mean, I know that at least in my office, you got a lot of experience.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I love that collaborative workplace because, I mean, you let me do a lot of independent work, but there was also a lot of give and take. Like, what do you actually think about this case? And having your voice be heard, and like actually someone reaching out and saying, I really do care what you think, goes a very long way. Because I had like a proactive, actually, you know, um, proactive like impact on your firm, which was very, I really appreciate that because it was eye opening. Like, this is actually what attorneys do rather than, what you see in media or even movies. It's like very glamorized. You're not always in court. You're not always the life-changing Johnny Cochran or whatever it is. So, I mean, you
Right.
strive to do that, but it's nice to see even on the day-to-day level, like what really being an attorney is. And you do have an impact on society, you do have an impact on your clients, but it's just much smaller. And there's still great work to be done. So I really
Right.
enjoy it.
Right. Right. I actually was thinking about you again because I was talking to a class and I used one of our cases where uh, we used the public records request to get some police data.
Right.
And
Yeah.
like, I just remember dropping off the box, like, hey, look, I need you to summarize this. And then you created all these nice tables, which we used in the mediation, which I don't even know if you were still at my office by the time we went to the mediation, but that
I left
definitely
right
helped
before the
too.
mediation. So I
All
like,
right.
yeah, the brief was like almost done. But you sent me the final one and I was like happy with the outcome. It was very like, that was a cool project even. Like the
Right.
creativity we did on that was really cool.
Right. Right. For sure. So, I mean, that was, that's like the benefit of when I give advice to young attorneys or to people thinking about going to law school, the benefit of working for a smaller place is you're going to get a lot more hands on experience just out of pure necessity than if
Right.
you start at a bigger office. Now, um, let's talk about where you went to law school. Where did you go to law school?
I went to California Western School of Law in San Diego. I recently graduated April 2020.
Right. So I remember when you were still at my office, and I think that we talked about this multiple times. I can remember one time where it was me, my brother Fletcher, who's an attorney, and you, and we were talking about what you should do
Right.
because you were in a great position. Tell the viewers what your law school decision was like.
So I had about 3 or 4 schools where I was looking into if I wanted to stay locally or if I wanted to go to San Diego because I went to UC San Diego. And then I was fortunate enough to have scholarship opportunities. And you were the one who told me that I can actually negotiate on the scholarship opportunity, which I had no idea. And I think they started me off at California Western. I think it was about 20% or 15%. And then you said, no, you take the scholarship that you got from the other school, send them that letter and say, look, this school is offering me 100%. And I think it was UOP or USF was offering me 100% scholarship. And so I sent that letter saying these other schools in the area are offering me 100% scholarship. I'm in the Bay Area, so I would live with family. So cost of living would be zero for me. That wouldn't even be taken into consideration. And then if I move to San Diego, I have to pay the rest of the scholarship that I'm not given, and then or the fees and tuition, and then cost of living. And so negotiating with and like talking to the office administration office was something that I had no idea I could do. Um, and so it was shocking to me that they were like, okay, yeah, sure, you can get the full scholarship. Or not full. They gave me, I think, 45 or 55% in the end, which makes a huge difference because it was the sum like of 3 years, not just per year or like based on anything. And then the only contingent was the 3.0 average. And we discussed that too. I remember you said, it's not, you won't fail. And that was my biggest fear is that I was going to fail. And you said, you won't fail, but you might have to make sure that you get no C's, which is the hardest thing in law school. I think my GPA that I had to get was like a 3.0, and I was able to do that throughout law school. And so it was a really good decision because, um, money isn't everything when you're looking at a law school, but it's a big factor. Um, because the money that I'm saving from law school, I have a grace period now where I don't need a job right away. I still like saved enough that my bills aren't pressing and pressuring me to find a job as soon as possible. So it is a big thing to consider when you're looking at law schools. And not only the financial aspect, but, things that you're interested in, like California Western had CIP, which is a California Innocence Project. And I thought I wanted to do criminal law. And that was a big thing there. The professor started it, Justin Brooks. He's there. You work on cases. You try to get people who are wrongfully convicted out of jail, out of prison, and you're working on those cases, researching it. So that's something that attracted me to the school right away. But I mean, in the end, I came back to civil litigation. So there's that too.
So when you, because I think that when we were discussing it, my only hesitation was that if you typically schools at Cal Western's level are if you don't do well, they cut like a
Yeah,
certain percentage of the bottom of the class, and that was my only
yeah,
concern was that like you need to make sure you don't fall in that bottom percentage.
right.
Whereas if you went to USF, they still have a bottom percentage, but it's a lot smaller than um, your school was, if I
Yeah,
remember right.
yeah. I think it was about 20% of the class, maybe 15 or 20% that they cut. So I had classmates that were with me that I saw day one and they weren't there at the end of the first year. So it was a very real fear, like, especially in law school, you don't have midterm exams, you don't have any grade, so you don't know where you stand until after your final exams. And as you know, it's like very difficult. Like you're studying to just pass one exam, and that's where you stand in your class rank. So, I mean, I think talking to you and realizing like this is a possibility, like it's not a greater possibility if I study hard, if I put in the in work in the work and everything, but it's always looming over you. So that's something I had to consider. But I'm glad I went with California Western in the end. It's a very small community. All the professors are very well acquainted with the community, the judges, the attorneys. So I really enjoyed it in the end.
What did you do for your summers? Like, what did you do for your first year summer?
Okay, so I went a little bit crazy and I worked every summer and every semester. Um, I did not take any pay, so a lot of employers were more willing to take me on. And they didn't really, because of that, I had more flexibility. I was able to work maybe if I had a higher work, if I had more classes, I was able to work like get away with working 10 hours a week because they just didn't care that I wasn't getting paid. So I started off at the public defenders the summer after my first year. I wanted to see if criminal law is something I wanted to do. And then I didn't really enjoy it because I was taking the work home with me a lot. It's very emotional and stressful, and it's very tangible. Like you see the people that are affected; they are in your community, and a lot of the cases like thefts or robberies or murders actually happen at places which is a little too real for me. So I didn't enjoy the public defenders, and then I ended up being in the district attorney's office right after in fall of my second year. I was in the appellate division, so I assisted with a lot of legal research, legal writing for appellate briefs. I really enjoyed that. That was an interesting experience because I also did an oral argument in traffic court for the appellate division. But then I ended up not really enjoying criminal law as a whole. And then I went into business law because I joined the Business Law Association, the Business Law Student Association. I was the president for that, and I was the president for Employment Law Society. So meeting those attorneys, I got interested into it, and I joined Aguirre and Severson my second year. And then my second summer, after my 2L year that summer, I was at Gruenberg Law. That's where I did all employment law work. I wrote complaints. I took client interviews. I assisted and prepared attorneys with depositions, mediations, and they did a little bit of personal injury. So I took my experience that I had with you and I applied it there. I helped with medical record summaries, mediation briefs, and then I helped a little bit with trial preparation. And then I wrote a motion for summary judgment there on my own. So that was like probably the most comprehensive and exposure I got in the employment law field. And that was also plaintiff side. And then after that, I got a judicial externship with Judge Lopez in federal court. I worked there for from October to December, and I worked 40 hours a week. So I was there full time, and I was getting credit for it for law school, which I completely enjoyed because the law clerks are so intelligent. They know everything. They tell you what they like about attorneys, what they don't like. So I got a good experience behind the door and the courtroom. And then Judge Lopez was also, I think she was one of the first, I want to say the first Latina magistrate judges. And she was very involved in the community, and she was just an amazing mentor. She helped me, really reach out of my comfort zone and she let me sit in on E&Es, talk to other magistrate judges. And then after that, I also interned at Boehm Law Group my third year. And then because of COVID-19, I worked from home remotely. And then I joined one of these other, she's a solo practitioner who worked at Gruenberg Law. She started her own firm, Gold Coast Counsel. And then I worked remotely for her for my post-bar.
What is because you've got a wide variety of experience, how have you taken like the little bits of like nuggets or jewels that each attorney has either provided you or wisdom that you've realized yourself, and how are you going to take everything that you've gathered going forward?
So I realized, like, from the criminal law aspect, like being at the public defenders and the district attorneys, if you are, like, not for me personally, but as advice to others, if you are interested in the criminal law field, you have to know, like, that is something you want to do. I believe you have to believe, like, 110% you want to either defend that client or be an advocate of the state. And if your heart's not there, you shouldn't be in that field. Just that's the reality of it. And then from my civil litigation side, I think there's a balance to it. It's not always 100%. You have to be 100% plaintiff side or defense side. There's a balance to it. You have to know, like, if a wrong has been committed, your client could be on either side. You just have to provide justice for that client efficiently. So seeing how these different firms go through their day-to-day process, like Gruenberg, Boehm Law Group, and Gold Coast Counsel were all plaintiff side firms, and they all did, majority of their work was employment law. I saw, like, overall, they just tried to get the best and most efficient outcome for their client, but they also operated, like, structure-wise, it was very similar. Like, there were associate attorneys, junior level attorneys, and then supervising attorneys. But personality-wise, they were very different. Like, Gruenberg Law, he's a very aggressive sort of bulldog attorney. He likes to hound down parties during depositions, and that just worked for him. That was his style. Boehm Law Group,
You said he likes to do what in depositions?
Like, he likes to hound down, like, he likes to irk the parties, like, get under their skin very fast, very easily. And if they're not crying, he's not happy. And that worked for him. I mean, that's the personality that he goes with, and it was a very aggressive style, but he got his outcome in the end. Boehm Law Group used different strategies. They were more pleasant with their opposing counsel. They thought that, you know, being cordial was the most efficient way. And then Gold Coast Counsel, she tried to, she always used of counsel attorneys to handle the depositions. So anything later after mediation or discovery, she kind of let other attorneys take the reign. So my takeaway from each of these is I learned that you have to find your own style and your own way of navigating the litigation process. I'm not an aggressive person. I don't believe in being very assertive, but I won't take away my zealous advocacy for my client just because of that. I believe in being respectful, being cordial, and in no way would that take away from the substance that I'm providing. I still believe in presenting my best work forward, and getting the best outcome for the client and for the firm. So that's my takeaway from all of that.
So I'm surprised because we've talked off before we started the show, and I'm just going to tell the listeners and the viewers that you're considering, you're seeking employment right now at both the plaintiffs and the defense side. And so, like, I heard what you said about, like, in criminal law, it's definitely you are either want to defend or you want to be a prosecutor. But part of me feels like that's kind of the same way on the plaintiff versus defense side. But what are your thoughts? Because I'm like, why would you want to work for the defense? But
I know, yeah. I've had so much experience with plaintiff side that I understand it, but sometimes I've had cases where I've worked on and I'm like, this cannot possibly be a case. Like, why are we taking this? There's just no claim. But the attorney was like 100% like, no, we have to do this. I totally believe what they're saying. Like, you cannot possibly, like, if you're thinking logically and
Right.
rationally, like, there's no claim. So you kind of appeal to the other side. But no way, like, you're gonna say, like, to your client, you know, I'm 100% siding with opposing counsel. We have no case. No, you try and break it down to them very logically. Like, realistically, a court won't see it from your perspective. So I
Right.
think in that aspect, I can relate to defense counsel, but that I'm not saying like plaintiff side or defense side, I would be 100% on that. I think it's by case basis. And I know some firms do handle both plaintiff side and defense work, but I think what it comes down to is being very picky and particular with who you take on as your client. Because
Right.
I mean, it's a privilege to have an abundance of cases and you're able to pick which one you want the most. It's a
Right.
little rare. Um, but if you have that ability, I think you should be very particular about who you're taking on.
Right. Well, I guess on the defense side, it doesn't matter because they are getting, meaning if the employer is willing
Right.
to pay their retainer and their hourly fee, I mean,
Yeah.
the work is the work. But on the plaintiff side, if you do take a bad case, um, the work is the work, but you may just get a smaller settlement, which means your fees are going to be a lot smaller. So
Right. Yeah.
it's not always beneficial. Um, so, all right. So uh, I'm going to ask you this because you've worked for what were the size in terms of attorneys of the employment firms that you worked for?
All of them were small to mid-level. I think Bohm Law Group was the only one that was a larger scale firm with like
So,
locations.
so when you say small, like a couple of attorneys or just one?
So Gold Coast Counsel was a solo practitioner. Bohm Law Group, I believe, had 15 to 25 attorneys. And then Gruenberg had 8.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right. So have you thought about starting your own practice in terms of like taking employment cases or personal injury cases, given like your parents' background as like entrepreneurs and yeah, so that's my question.
I have thought about it. I just think I want a little bit more experience as a practicing attorney with my license, and just getting a full exposure of writing more motions and handling a caseload from beginning to end. I think I haven't had that particular experience yet, like going from the client intake all the way to trial. So I would want like about, I don't want to say any years because who knows what's going to happen in the
Right.
future, but hopefully, I mean, 5 years experience, I think you can be a very seasoned attorney in personal injury field or personal injury or employment law. So I would want that experience first. And then I think that's the most beneficial way that I can provide like quality services. Um, I mean, I think it's very difficult to start your own solo practitioner firm your first year out of law school, but I've seen people do it and they can succeed. I just think I want to wait a little bit longer before I actually do that.
Can you talk about your parents' background and how it's impacted you as a student coming up and now as an attorney?
Yeah, sure. So my parents are from India. They were born and raised there. They moved here as newlyweds with barely any money to their name. My father did not have a very stable background with his family. And so they moved to Seattle. They tried to start working, and neither of them have college degrees. So they started, odd jobs, and then they finally collected enough money to come to California because that's where they wanted to settle. And their work ethic from the beginning was, I'm going to work and try and make the best life I can for myself and my family. So I think they were in their 20s and they just worked so hard and they raised me and my sister. And then finally, my mom owned her first business. She owned a Subway in Palo Alto. That was completely on her own. I mean, they moved up slowly. Like they started as working at Burger King, being managers at Burger King in Hayward, right across from Monroe Catholic. They worked there until like probably into their 30s, and then they became managers, and then they became co-owners. My dad's brother helped invest, and then they owned it as co-partners. And then probably until their like late 30s, that's when my mom opened her own Subway because she was able to gain so much experience and people invested in her and they believed in her. And so she had her own business and she was working on her own. And then from that, it generated a lot of profit because she was putting in, like, that was her life and soul, was that business. And then they were able to turn enough profit that my dad had his Denny's in San Francisco. And he bought it by himself. And he also, like, that was my mom's path. But after Burger King, my dad worked at Denny's. He was a manager and then he became general manager. So he slowly moved up the ladder too. And I think from both of them, I've learned that they've instilled in me that if you work really hard, no matter what, despite the obstacles, that we still face today, we're still minorities. I am a woman. Um, they aren't as educated as they want to be. You can still achieve what you want to achieve. They didn't take no for an answer. They pushed through. They got to where they are by they kept pushing forward. And I think that's their mentality, and that's what they instilled on me. They said, like right now I'm searching for jobs, and they said a lot of the question revolves around salary range, and especially in San Diego, it's much lower than the Bay Area. And they said, your value, what you're worth, and if you have someone else tell you your value, they're just going to say it off of face value, like what they see 10 minutes of interacting with you. But you actually know your value, what you have, what quality, skills, and everything you maintain. So don't settle. And because of their support and everything they've been through, I strongly believe in their advice and everything they have to offer for me. They've supported me and my sister. They strongly believe in education, and I think that's really shaped who I am today. Um, I 100% believe in keep pushing forward and just try and do your best and put in the hard work and the work ethic, and your goals will come and they will be achievable in the end.
Nice, nice. Um, yeah, because I remember your parents' background because of the Burger King,
Yeah.
and yeah, that's why I asked that earlier question about whether or not at some point you would want to start your own business because that's what your parents have been doing.
Right. Yeah. They they're very courageous for that. They're so strong, and they're really fearless. It takes a lot to do that.
For sure. And then so talk to us. I searched online and I saw that you got an award from your law school. Talk to us about the award you got from your law school.
So there's an organization called Miss JD, and it's a mentorship program. You apply for it, and you have to be have a certain GPA. There's sort of criteria and qualifications. And so I applied, and I was. It's sort of it's not a scholarship, but it's merit based, but you don't get any financial scholarship. So it's just like a program. And I was selected as Miss JD. They pick about 5 or 6 girls around the United States who have excelled in law school and who want to have an impact on the community and who strive to improve female attorneys' positions within the legal field. So I was selected, and I went to a conference in San Francisco. We were given the certificate and then matched with a female attorney within a legal field that we're interested in. So that was one award. And then another one is the American Bar Association's Judicial Pipeline certification. I was selected for that for the diversity scholarship. I attended, it was basically a conference in Las Vegas where we can meet judges of color. And because it's so rare that there are, I believe more opportunities are starting to come forward for minority attorneys, but not as much for minority judges. So we met with judges in Las Vegas at a conference, and it was still a little disheartening to see not as many female judges and minority judges. I didn't meet a single South Asian judge that was there. So that was a little sad, but there's still work that can be done. They can still that was the whole purpose of the conference, encouraging us to apply, encouraging us to get familiar with a judicial externship program and getting ourselves out there because, we believe you won't get those opportunities unless you apply. And it's a little difficult because you believe that I'm not going to be picked because of A, B, C, whatever it might be. But we have to overlook those certain criterias and just try and apply and see what can we get. Because if we don't put ourselves out there, minority women, people of color, they're not going to move forward if we just don't try. So that was an interesting program that I did. And I hope people who are watching or younger students who are interested in the legal field really think about other opportunities that are out there, like a judicial externship or being a judge is very attainable. Don't think that I have no experience, I could never do that because of maybe I don't have the grades or whatever. You can get there. Not every judge that is on the bench went to Harvard Law School. It depends on, a lot of it is on networking, who your experience, and the more you try to apply to those opportunities, the better your, resume and everything will look in the end.
Nice. Can you talk to us about, you just took the bar exam? You took the bar exam in July?
October.
Oh, October. Oh, because of COVID.
Yeah. It was the weird one.
Yeah. All right. So let's go back to March. So you're in your final semester. And then how did COVID impact your final semester?
Okay. So February, we were given notices that our classes may be streamed online, but we were still going in person. And then March, we got an email saying, do not come back to class. Everything's going to be online on Panopto or on Zoom. And so all of my final exams were online, some of them open book. It was so weird because I didn't even get to say bye to my friends. I remember clearly saying to one of my friends in a Friday class, I'll see you Monday. And she's like, oh, great. Can you give me the notes for Friday because I might have to leave early? And I was like, sure, no problem. And then Monday I didn't see her because we were just staying at home. So it was very surreal. The final examinations online were not ideal. I barely knew how to use the exam software. And then, I'm sure there was a lot of cheating because there was no monitoring. There was no AI proctor, nothing. So a lot of the professors did make an open book, but I'm sure, I don't know how it went. So we were given credit or no credit grades for the last semester. So a lot of people were upset because they were trying, you might have planned to boost your GPA, but that didn't happen. And then after that, bar prep started with Barbary in May. And they were saying everything's going to be as normal. We're preparing for the July bar exam. And then at that point, they said it's probably going to be in person. That's what we're planning for. So bar prep started, and then June.
Wait, let me interject. Yeah. Is the bar prep in person still, or was that remote too?
That was remote, yeah. So in April, they were saying, we're not sure what's happening. We don't know if it's going to be in person or remote. And we have it in person in our classrooms at California Western. That's something that they offer. And so they were emailing us constantly saying, we'll see what happens. And then we didn't even know the start date also because they said that it might be delayed.
Right.
But it was remote. And then it started right on the date that we were supposed to start. I think it was the first week of May.
All right. So what did they do? What did your school do about your graduation?
It was remote. It was really sad. It was a Zoom graduation. Actually, I was so upset because I bought one of those sashes.
Yeah.
I got a customized one with my name, and then it said JD and it said class of 2020. And I had all of my cords from all of my societies. I was in the South Asian Law Society, Women's Law Caucus, Business Law Society, Employment Law Society. I was on the board for all of them. So I got the cords, and then I had my robe, which was mailed to us, and then it was a Zoom graduation. And I got personalized personalized letters, the invitations. and I paid extra for that. It was just it all went to waste. And then I think our school gave us an apology gift, like saying like, oh, sorry, you didn't have a graduation, but we can't have it at the convention center because we don't know about social distancing, how it would work. So they gave me a frame for my diploma, which they mailed, which was nice, but it doesn't make up for a graduation.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
I was kind of curious. All right. So sorry, I like interjected. So then
No, it's
you
fine.
you started Barbary in May, like you were going to take the bar in July.
July, yeah. And it was considered to be in person, or expected to be. So we were having recorded videos online, and then Zoom meetings with our professors or with the tutors. I think on like a weekly, bi-weekly basis. And then the essay tutor would have morning meetings and classes. So it was all remote. It wasn't ideal because it was the middle of summer. You know, everyone's staying at home, everyone's getting frustrated, but then we're like trapped inside our house studying, and we can't go to the library, we can't go to cafes, we can't go out. So there was no room to actually, you know, vent or get your energy out. And then in June, we got a notice that it's going to be delayed to September. So, and it would be remote. So we had, you know, you're preparing for a sprint from May to July, ready to take the exam. And then now you have to prepare for a marathon, which is just mentally exhausting. Like you cannot wrap your head around, like, I'm ready to take this very stressful 2-day exam and then get it completely thrown out the window. So in June, for like 2 weeks, we had a break. We did nothing. They said, you can do whatever you want, but I suggest you take a break and not study. And so July 4th, I think we started again. And
wait, real quick. Were you nervous about, like, did you take the break? And,
yeah, I took the break.
And were you nervous about taking the break?
Yeah, I was. I had Adaptabar, and my friends were saying, just do Adaptabar. You should just keep up with the MBE because that's going to be the same. And I tried to do it.
What's Adaptabar? Because I don't.
Oh, it's a software, and it just gives you practice on MBE. So you just do MBE questions, and it filters through, and it tells you your strengths and your weaknesses. And there's like 1,500 questions.
All right. And so for the non-lawyer law students or non-lawyers, the MBE is like the multiple choice portion of the bar exam that I think every state has to take.
Right. Yeah. So there are 200 MBE or multiple choice questions for the bar, and then 6 essays and 1 like performance test, and it's over 2 days. But our format was 6 essays day 1, day 2, 100 multiple choice questions, and then the performance test, and all online. So
what software do they use?
They used ExamSoft, which is the company that I used for my final exams. But I'll get back to that because that was a pain in itself. So we started again, and then we were preparing for September, and then the Supreme Court of California had a meeting saying all of these jurisdictions are doing things on their own. Like, we're going to have the states handle it, but we might have to delay it further because the NCBE can't give us, they're providing the 200 multiple choice questions like this original date. So they didn't want, so basically the NCBE said, we're not giving the multiple choice questions. You have to do it on your own. So there were 100 MBE questions that were given, but they were MBE-like. So it was not the ones that were previously given. They weren't the same. So we got 100 basically guinea pig questions in October. So it was delayed once more because of having to administer those 100 questions. They wanted everyone across the board to get it on the same day. So day of the exam, October 5th, was the essays. Since it was all remote, everyone was freaking out. Like, what if my Wi-Fi goes out? What if I shift in my chair and AI proctoring catches me moving? You know, you get flagged, and the software was so unsteady that everyone had so many questions.
Wait, so what? So you got it back, because I went to school when I was in school, we had ExamSoft, but we had like literal like disk drive that you'd have to plug in to your USB port, and then that's how you activated the ExamSoft.
Okay.
Explain what the AI Proctor is. I don't know anything about that.
Okay. So you buy the software and you download it on your computer, and the state bar had all of these criteria, like you should download it on this date, before this date. You should do a practice exam on the ExamSoft by this date. You have to upload your ID by this date. And then they gave you all the information on ExamSoft and like frequently asked questions. So ExamSoft itself is just like a software where you have each essay question and you could write on it. So you have to download it and buy it. And it's very basic. There's nothing fancy about this software. It just has like bullet point 1 and you're writing your essay on bullet point 1. Then you go to the next screen and it's bullet point 2.
Right.
Very basic.
Right.
And so there are questions.
But you can't leave the screen though. That was like
yeah.
It like locks you in.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you can't leave the screen, you can't access any apps, you can't go on the internet, nothing. So it's supposed to like be encrypted and shut down all of your computer. And then there was like all these people were freaking out saying, I'm taking this in my house. What if, there's a car crash outside and the sound comes into my, like while I'm taking the exam, will I be flagged? And the question, like all of these valid questions, like you can't control outside or external factors. So they said you have to be in a room by yourself. No one can be in the room with you. It will be proctored by AI. If something happens, your video will be flagged and then it will be reviewed by a human. And then if the human flags it, then you will be reported and you'll have a chapter violation and then you have to appeal it. So there was this whole process for if your video gets flagged. But they said no shifting, no unusual eye movement, no like looking off, glancing, because all of these things would be flagged. So it was very like odd because you're in your own room. There is no proctor. So you feel very uncomfortable taking a high stress exam and just trying to do it by yourself because no one's telling you start your exam. You're getting a password link online and you're entering it at 8 a.m. and you just start your essay. And then after an hour, you start your second essay. You get your second password link. You keep going online in between the essays as breaks because you can exit ExamSoft, go online, see the password, do your essay. So you keep shifting, like it opens ExamSoft so you don't have access to anything. You take your first essay, then you exit it, go back online, get the password, come back. It's super weird. You're like doing it by yourself and you're like, wow, this is a very stressful, high stakes exam. But then I have to look up the password myself and enter it and then take it myself and no one is there. So if you like leave,
but everyone's got to start at the same time.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they released the password at 8 a.m. and then you have 15 minutes to enter the password and then you take the exam at 8:30. But right when you get your password at 8 a.m., you can start at 8 a.m. So you get it early and you can start it early, but the suggested time is at 8:30.
Oh, but once you start, you just have the hour or
yeah. You have an hour and then it uploads automatically after 1 hour or you submit it.
Oh, okay. Because
if you want to see something that's like completely unprepared for remote test taking, it's the bar exam. It's not meant for like thousands of people to take at one time.
Right. Because I mean, I'm on a couple of group chats and we were seeing that. Was the bar passage rate higher than normal this year?
It was higher, yeah, because the score is lower. I think it's at 1390 and 100 MBE. I think they went back to 200. The bar exams today for February, that's 200 MBE.
But before when you guys took it, it was 100 and then they lowered the score.
Yeah. And then this time around is still a lower score.
So like when we see the headlines, all we see is that like they've already made it from 3 days. When I took it, it was 3 days. It was like Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday to 2 days. And then now they had 2 days and they're lowering the score. Right. So when I would be on multiple lawyer group chats, people would be like, these people are getting in easy, this and that. But after talking to you, that would be incredibly stressful.
Yeah.
Just in terms of like for instance, I knew one of my good friends never used his laptop to um, for anything in law school. Like he wrote his notes, and I
Right.
think he wrote his exam, and I'm pretty sure he wrote his bar exam. I don't know if that would be possible in 2020, but clearly he wouldn't be able to write his exam, his bar exam. I don't, because prior to
Right.
this, were they still allowing writers to write?
No.
Okay,
Not unless
all
you
right.
had a disability, then you'd be in person. And then you could choose to do it by handwriting, but it was all on
But
exam.
but what about non-COVID? So like, let's say February of 2020, could you still write your exam?
I think so because it's
Okay, right.
yeah. But I mean, I understand like the headlines, people who didn't experience it. I mean, a lot of people didn't know it was delayed until October. So, I mean, you don't really know what's happening until you actually talk to someone who's been through
Right.
it because I had to argue with my school. Like I was the one who said, we need a place to take our exam. If you want our bar passage rate to be high for our school, you should set up our alumni in a hotel. And then they did that. They set up private rooms. So I had a hotel room because you just don't know. Like, what if your internet disconnects? What if someone happens to walk by your window and all that outside noise comes in? There are just so many things you cannot account for. And they were fine with it. They set us up in each person had their own hotel room from the weekend. Then they provided lunch, and so we took our own exam in our hotel room. And then there were like other issues where people were trying to contact on the day of. Um, like if they would exit out of ExamSoft or something, it would glitch. So they would have to call the hotline for ExamSoft, but the wait was like an hour itself. And if you're outside of that schedule, like the recommended schedule, you can start earlier and you'll still finish a little bit earlier, but you'll start like after the lunch break, you'll start again with everyone, right? So if you were a little bit off on the time, it's fine. But if you started much later, you get booted out and you can't start. So if the exam says start at 8 a.m. and you start at like 8:15, or no, it was like start at 8:30 and you get the password earlier at 8. You can start at 8, you can start at 8:30, but you can't start at 9. So if you start
Right.
at 9, you're completely booted out. You cannot take the bar exam.
Damn.
Yeah, so
And
it was
then you can't pass. If you
yeah.
miss, you can't
Yeah.
pass.
And then people were calling ExamSoft in their hotline and there was a wait for an hour and they didn't know what to do. And some of them were given advice. Like we had chats going on Facebook and Twitter, and some were given advice like just take the next bar exam. It's fine. Like you can't do anything. Like that was the advice they were giving.
God damn.
And then I
Yeah.
remember for mine, actually, I can't believe I forgot this, but my essays. So one of the instructions said, exit your software or it will be a Chapter 11 violation. And I remember seeing the comments underneath saying, so do we exit the essay, like press submit and you're still in the software, or do we exit the whole thing? And there was no answer for it. So I started my essay and I kept thinking, like, once I finished, I submitted my essay, but the browser is still open. And I kept thinking, do I exit this or do I not exit this? Like, I don't want a chapter violation for something so stupid. And then I was like sitting there for like 2 minutes, like, oh my God, what do I do? There's no one even here I can ask. I can't even touch my phone because I'm on AI Proctor. So I exited it and it just froze. My whole computer crashed. I couldn't exit it. I couldn't do anything. And I started crying. I started freaking out. I picked up my phone because once you exit, it's not proctored anymore. So I started calling my friends because they were on break because they submitted the essay. And I was like, I don't know what to do. They said, call ExamSoft. I called them. I couldn't find anything. They started Googling things. They said, you should exit. It says exit and you'll save your exam. I couldn't exit though. The essay wasn't letting me exit. It said error. And then they said, the second thing you should do is restart your computer. So I have a MacBook and I tried to restart it and it said error. It wouldn't let me restart. And so I had to like crash start it, like actually like reboot my computer, but I was so scared that my essay wasn't saved. And then I finally crash started it, like I rebooted my entire computer and I was able to log in. But it was like a risk. Like I submitted my first essay, maybe it saved, maybe it didn't save. And then the second essay I was able to start on time. But there's just so many things, like you're expected to take this exam, like something that's always proctored. You always go to the same place. You go to the convention center. They check your ticket. They check your ID. None of that's there. You're sitting on your laptop alone. There's no ID check. You can't even see the AI proctor, you know? It's just you doing your own thing at your own time, submitting it. And then at the end of the day, at the end of like 6 hours of essays, you're like, okay, I just finished the exam. And then you upload it on your own too. It's just like, I think overall, like all of this is so much trust in technology that's just not there yet. It's just not.
Would you have preferred to do it in person, or would you have preferred for them to wait until everyone could do it in person?
I would have had, I wouldn't mind it in person. If I had to wear a mask and we're 6 feet away, I would think I could have done it. It would have been way better than what we had to go through, because it was just so unstable. So many what ifs and just so much uncertainty. It was just not, they weren't prepared for it. That's essentially what it came down to, because the Supreme Court was asking like, what do people feel comfortable with? Do they all have access to laptops? Is that something that they could bring? Because we were still paying the fees. The fees were still exactly the same for the bar exam. Like I paid a laptop fee to use my own laptop in a hotel. So it was just like very odd and surreal. And
wait, what fee do they charge a laptop fee for a normal bar exam?
Yeah. To bring your laptop to the convention center, you pay a fee. But I always assumed that laptop fee is to set up, like use their facilities, and like you're setting up your laptop and whatever it may be, like, okay, maybe it's just an extra charge. But I'm using my own personal laptop at my home. Why should it be the same fees?
Right.
And then they're using a whole different software. I don't know. It was very odd. It was just not ideal.
How are they doing it today? Are they doing it in person, or is it?
No, it's remote. Yeah. But at least they had the first round of knowing what works, what doesn't work. Like probably having a larger hotline center, more like clearer directions, more suitable like glitches and fixes. Like I'm sure they like improved the software since October and have been improving it. But to go through it with no one knowing what to expect, like I couldn't ask anyone. We could call ExamSoft, but even they didn't know, because they said it's being administered by the state bar. So it was just, and then the state bar, if you ask them a question, they're like, oh, it's up to the Supreme Court of California. And then who can reach the Supreme Court of California? Like it was just so bad. The bureaucracy of it all, the inefficiency, it was horrible. It was the worst experience I had, but I'm so glad to be done. I cannot imagine taking it twice remote. It's not an enjoyable experience.
What did it feel like when you got your results?
So I I like couldn't believe it. I kept thinking like scenarios that, how after you take the exam you think like, oh, I should have done this, like, oh, I missed this one thing or this one element. So I kept thinking that. And I felt a little secure on the essays, but I'm very weak in MBE. And I just had no idea where I stood. So I was just like all over the place. I'm like, okay, I'll be nicer to my parents if I pass the first time. If I like throw this into the trash can, I passed. If I make it in, I was like kept trying to like calm myself and come up with silly things. Because you really don't know what, like if you're passing or not. And then I think it was at like 6 p.m. it comes out. And I checked it early at 5:50 and it was up there and it said pass. And we're still in the hotel, so I started screaming. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe this is real. And then I waited 10 minutes to make sure that it wasn't a glitch, that it wasn't an error or something that's just there. And then at 6 p.m. I saw like, okay, this is the real deal. And then I like checked to make sure, like I read the letter, like, does it say congratulations? I checked everything. I screamed, I hugged my mom, my dad, my sister. It was just so surreal. Like you don't believe it until the day of where you actually see it. And like people were telling me like, oh, you'll be fine, you'll pass, you'll be okay. Like it's meant for people like you to pass. I'm like, you don't know that. Like you really don't know. So it's very stressful, but I'm glad Barbary was really helpful. Adaptive Bar was another resource that was helpful, and Critical Pass, like the flashcards for the rules. I tried to do everything I possibly could. I did the past exam essays on the State Bar website. I just went through and issue spotted everything. Like if you really try and do everything possible, I mean, your chances are higher. So I was glad that I'm just done with it now.
Did Barbary provide like a schedule for you guys?
Yeah, they had an online schedule. Um, it started off with the lessons and the class reviews and the rule reviews, and then the closer we got, it became just essay practice and MBE practice. There were very few MBE practices, though. I don't know why, but it was like 10 a day, maybe, or 14 a day. So that's why I supplemented it with adaptive bar. But
Okay.
Barbary really prepared me for essays really well. That was something I
How
thought
did you decide to go with Barbary versus like there's a lot of other options
yeah,
now?
like Themis or something.
Yeah.
Um, I think our school has a contract with them, so you can decide to choose another company. But I paid a deposit with my school, so I think it was about 1,500 and then $500 deposit, $1,500 total. And so if you finish 90% of the essays, or yeah, 90. I think it's 90 or 95%, like a large amount of the essays and then the course, you get the $500 back. So I just did that, and then I heard good things about Barbary's tutors and their program, and it's a lot of structure, especially at a time when there wasn't much structure.
Right.
Day to day was very uncertain. I mean, we didn't even know what date our bar exam was at one time, so Barbary provided a lot of support.
Right. I couldn't even imagine. I mean, I couldn't imagine. I was talking to another assistant on the show about her bar experience, and I was like, studying for the bar is like preparing for a fight because
Yeah,
you want to peak at
right.
the end of July. You don't want to like peak too early, and obviously you don't want to peak too late. But then, um, but that studying that time period when you're like like in the whole getting ready for war, you can't do that forever. So
Right.
like to have that intense study period have to go from May until October is just insane, to be
Yeah.
honest with you. So that's where I'm like, damn, like you're right. It would go from like preparing for a sprint to preparing for like a marathon so you don't burn out.
Exactly. Yeah. The burnout was very real, especially in September when, it feels like almost like a year that you're studying because it's just so much, like it's been ongoing. And then we, like, even I remember, the essays for Barbary, they grade you, they give you like a score and they say, like, oh, by the last 2 weeks, you'll like peak, right? You'll hit your
Right.
65 plus. Um, and then I remember my scores were getting so high, like I was doing so well. And I like, you gain the confidence, like, okay, I'm stronger at this essay and this one's not there yet, or whatever subject. You just have your strengths and weaknesses. And I just remember after hearing the delay, my scores just kept going down, and I was just like, I don't feel good about this. Like the day we found out that it was delayed, we had an essay, and I scored so poorly on it. I never scored that poor on any of my past essays, and it really does have an effect on you. It's a
Right.
mentality. You have to stay positive. You have to stay optimistic. I mean, in general, like whenever you take or preparing for the bar, you should try and be as positive as you can, but dealing with the pandemic at the same time, it was a struggle. It was insane.
Yeah, I could imagine. I mean, that sounds awful. Because
Yeah.
one of the things is that uh, like was on trial call actually this Monday um, for an unlawful detainer case, but I knew going in that they didn't have available courtrooms and we weren't like first in line, and so we got that pushed out. But on the day of my call, um, Alameda County uses Blue Jeans to do the video conferencing. Well, my Blue Jeans wasn't working. It was like spotty. Like I was having bad connection in terms of my video and my sound. And then I had to call in with my landline. And I'm just like, man, if I was in the middle of a trial, like 10 years ago, I would have been nervous about the actual mechanics of doing the trial. Now that doesn't really make me nervous, but I would be terrified that like my Zoom is going out
Right.
because like if someone can't hear you or you're like garbled, you may not even be aware of it because like it looked fine to me, and then they're like they can't hear you, so I had to call in, and I'm like, man, like, and I'm the only person on my Wi-Fi. Like
Right. Yeah.
it's me in here right now, so it's crazy.
Yeah, like you have to learn to adapt to all of these things and so fast. And like the court system's already backed up from their regular schedule, and now it's just like tenfold. They have to
Right.
adapt and adjust and get their courtroom clerks adjusted to everything, and then attorneys have to go to whatever, maneuver to whatever software they're using. It's just so many changes at once, and it's just not, our system's not built for that. So
Right.
it's like a lot of change at once, and it's very difficult. You have your own solo practice. You have to be, your time is the most valuable thing for you. Um,
Right.
so it's like, it's a lot of changes, and I completely understand. Like it essentially sucks, like doing what we have to do right now, like as attorneys,
Right.
if you're in any other field, it's pretty not, I mean, I wouldn't say it's easy, but it's just like, you're more comfortable talking to, your firm on Zoom, and then you might deal with those aspects, but if your call disconnects and if it's just a general meeting, you can follow up on an email or whatever, phone call. But within our field, it's very like direct client contact or direct judge contact. Like you have to be sometimes in person, face to face. People have to hear you. Um,
Right. Right. And
uh,
people have to feel you. And I'm thinking about the trial that you were on.
yeah,
I don't know what I was saying, but there was like two women jurors that in my closing were crying because of some analogy I made with like the movie Raging Bull or something like that. But we're in really the field business at the end of the day.
right,
And like the Zoom and the video stuff a lot of times is very sterilized and doesn't, it's hard to emote or feel certain things because there's a certain like um disconnect, and in someone could be watching, like a juror could be hypothetically watching the trial from their bathroom. They could
right,
be watching it from their bed. And so, you know, and it's hard to be like, wow, like to put the proper emotion to keep
right,
people's attention. Um, there's no like books that are seminars you can go to because really not that many people have done it and much less done it well, so that
right,
there's like proof of concept. So it is literally like the wild west, um as it relates to doing, whether it's the bar exam or a jury trial, uh, or something with like important results, and people have either money on the line or their license on the line, or I think they're doing criminal trials, their life on the line.
right.
Um, I don't think this is the best technology for that.
Right. Yeah.
To
There
me,
is a
like,
yeah.
yeah. So I mean, it's definitely like a new world in, but at least you're a young attorney and you've performed under a high stress situation with technology, and you got it done. I mean,
Yeah.
that's pretty impressive.
Yeah. I guess I have
That's
that
like,
under my belt.
for sure. I mean, that's pretty impressive because I mean, I was freaking out.
Yeah.
Um,
It is like you're under so much stress and anxiety. Like you have to show your test performance, but I mean, I guess like the only thing that good came out of it is the people who are taking the February bar at least can, you know, reach out for advice, and we can provide them with everything. And I think probably the July bar is going to be remote. So, if anyone who's watching or needs help, um, for the preparing for the July bar, I think it's important to reach out to past bar takers to really know like what you're in, what you're going to have to set up for, what you're going to take. There are little things that you can do to at least prepare and be within your control before then.
right, right. Man, but like I feel like I've learned a ton in just this bar conversation, and I didn't anticipate us going this deep, but I'm glad I asked because, like, I hate to be the old man talk about get off my lawn, but when I would see the things, I'd be like, why are they like lessening it from 3 days to 2 days and the score is
Right.
lower?
Yeah.
They're just trying to let everybody in. But
Yeah.
now I have a new appreciation.
I mean, that's true because I mean, there was an argument for diploma privilege too at one point for California. So
Wait, an argument for what?
diploma privilege. that
Meaning like, oh, you graduate, you get
you're,
temporary or automatic?
I guess both. I mean, automatic saying like your JD is your qualification for a bar license.
Yeah.
And then what they went with is the temporary that you can get a provisional license now. So you
Okay.
have, if you are a 2020 graduate, it only applies for those people. So if you don't pass the bar within, I think it's till 2022, you can take the bar anytime until 2022. So
Okay.
between now and then, you can have a provisional license and work under the supervision of attorney as an attorney.
Okay. That
Yeah, so
makes sense.
those were arguments too. And I mean, being in it, like going through it, it seemed like a very ideal thing at the time because I remember it was so crazy. It was like the Black Lives Matter protests happening, things were burning, people were out in the news. At the same time, the pandemic was happening. Trump's presidency was occurring. Like it seemed like, I don't know, it seemed like an apocalypse at the time. Like
Yeah. And
going
you're trying to study for the bar.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And you're trying to stay serious and focused. It's a lot. It was like looking back, it was pretty crazy. So, I mean, if you talk to someone who's been through it, it's just like it's very surreal.
All right. So I asked this to all my guests. If there was one thing that you would tell first year Rima about her legal journey, and I know you're not that far into it, what advice or recommendation would you give her?
Um, I would say try more things that scare you. I didn't do trial practice and I didn't compete in like oral advocacy or like appellate work. They had like all these smaller inter-school competitions, and I just didn't do it because I felt like, oh, I might not do that in the future. I was like a little afraid to do trial practice because I still felt like a student. Like my whole life I've been a student, so I didn't really feel prepared for it. But I think I should have given it a chance. And not be so afraid because the only place you can really screw up with not that many things at stake is in law school. Like your
Right.
grades are there, but it's something within your control. Like if you do your best, and you can always ask professors and people for help. So I think it's a safer space than I thought. I was afraid, of like judgment, or maybe I will be really bad at oral argument, or I may not place. But like in the end, who cares? I should have.
Right.
That's something I should have done a little bit more because if I didn't place or if I didn't get a trophy or if I didn't, get the A that I wanted, it's not that big of a deal. It looks better that I at least tried it. I can say that I tried it, or I can say like I tried the competition and found out it wasn't for me. Whatever the outcome is, you can always twist it for your benefit. But I think I should have broken out of my shell a little bit earlier.
And this is a question I asked all the attorneys too. If you could do it all over again, would you still become a lawyer? You're a month in, so.
Yeah, I would. So far, I would. We'll see 10 years from now.
And then my final question is that are there any question? Wait, let me back up. Is there any question that I should have asked you?
I don't know. I don't think so. Yeah, I think you hit everything.
Okay.
There were great questions. Yeah.
All right. So if people want to connect with you, I'm going to leave your social medias that you want to connect with people in the show notes. But where could people find you just generally?
On LinkedIn, they can connect with me. I accept anyone who's interested in like building a conversation, asking for advice. I respond pretty well on LinkedIn. Feel free to ask me anything. It's always helpful to ask as many people as you can with different experiences. Even if you're not considering law school or just want to know more information, totally feel free to ask me any questions.
I want to thank you for coming on today. It's been a pleasure. It's been great to catch up because, I'm glad that we were able to do a lot of this on the video, but I just want to thank you again. You are one of my best assistants, and it's been a pleasure seeing you grow.
It's been so nice. Yeah, I mean, it's been like so long. I've known you for what, 7 years now? I think.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's been good. I really appreciate. I think you were one of my. I mean, you're one of my earlier bosses, starting straight out of college. But probably the best experience I've ever had because I grew so much from being a legal assistant to actually learning skills that I could take with me and sharpen throughout my legal career. So it was a good experience. It's been
Yeah.
so nice catching up too.
Yeah. It's been nice catching up. So I'll leave the show notes. Thank you again. Thanks for coming on. I appreciate you.
All right, thanks.